Hi, everybody. It's Mimi, and here I am with another episode of Be Heard, Empower Yourself. Um, Today I have someone who is an interesting person, very interesting. Her name is Satori. Satori, say hi to my people.
Well, I'm happy to be here with Mimi. I don't know, Mimi, did you want to be on camera or no?
Yeah, we will take care of that. We're just going to start off this way.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
hello, everyone. I'm very honored to be on Mimi's show, and I'm grateful that she's having me here to talk about what I'm up to in life.
That's right. And so I had, before we get into it, I had a shoulder replacement. I'm a little bit out of things right now, but I'm gonna be back to full speed in about 6 weeks. And so if I seem a little slower talking or whatever, it's because, I had surgery, I'm on meds, whatever. But the show must go on, as they say. Now, Satori, let's get back to you. You
Mhm.
are a storyteller yourself,
I am.
and you know a lot of stories.
Yes.
And what inspired you to pursue this storytelling as a career?
Well, I think of myself as coming from a long line of storytellers. My
Mhm.
mother, her friends, they all come from the Alabama, Mississippi, Jim Crow South. And
Yeah.
that's the way they communicated. And although they weren't highly educated women, they had masters and PhDs in storytelling, very visual, character driven. And so they were always pouring stories into our ears, and I would be riveted by because the way they told the story would engage
Uh-huh.
my brain, and
Right.
I could see it like a little movie in my mind. So I never thought of storytelling as anything but a language. I mean, if you speak French in your house, you
Mhm.
speak French too. So I
Yeah.
spoke storytelling, and I never knew that it was something that could be a career because, I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't grow up thinking, oh, you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to be a breather.
Exactly. But,
Right,
darling, you know what? You also didn't know that the story of Black people in America would not be written down anywhere, that would be hidden. Am I
right,
correct?
right, right. And so I was what inspired me to be a storyteller and to have that become a career was that I was flying around the country telling stories with a New York-based organization called The Moth.
Oh,
And one night I was on stage telling my story of grief and loss. I had lost my mother, and then 9 months later, I lost my son. And I was telling my story, and I could hear a pin drop. And I could
mm.
see that the audience was waiting for my next word. And it hit me, you're a storyteller. And then when people began to thank me via email from all over the world for telling my story, I realized, oh, it was a service. This is a service. And I then began to see myself as a storyteller. And I asked some friends that I had known for years, if you were to brand me, because branding was a
It's,
big thing back then,
oh, it
if you
still
were to,
is.
and still is, what would you say I was? Oh, a storyteller, no, no question. So
Mhm.
that's what I took myself to be. I had always told stories through writing,
Yeah.
through comedy, through song, just
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
it was an easy, it wasn't even a leap.
Mhm. So how did you, I assume you get paid to do this. You get
Yes,
paid.
I in 2012, uh,
Mhm.
I live in Detroit, Michigan. So,
Mhm.
as I said, I lost my mother and my son. So 6 years later, in 2012, I had been crawling back from hell. And in
I've
2012,
been there. Mhm. No,
I,
mhm.
I knew that I was coming back to life. I could feel a desire to do and be and join. Uh, and Detroit was doing the same thing because Detroit had been under emergency management, Flint water crisis, water shutoffs, people leaving the city, decreased tax base, you name gentrification, you name it.
Yeah.
Detroit was under assault and
Yeah.
it was coming back to life. So I thought as an artist, well, if storytelling could begin to forgive and heal me, could it do the same for the city of Detroit? So
Mhm.
one morning I was living in the basement of a friend's house. Wall Street had crashed, too big to fail had failed, and failed me because I was on the front line of failure being an artist. I had this delicious idea, the Secret Society of Twisted Storytellers, which I thought, ooh, what if there was a place people could gather and listen and tell stories, stories that would make a difference, stories that would um, connect us in humanity. And
Right.
like I had a vision that if I was in Whole Foods or you were in Whole Foods and someone heard you tell a story on my platform, they would say, well, how's your mother? Or congratulations on that promotion because they had heard you tell your story. So there was fodder there to begin a relationship or to be known and definitely to be heard. So I began to develop and storytellers. I began to facilitate storytelling workshops because it wasn't hard to notice that even though everyone has a story, they don't know how to tell it. So I help with that. And as I was developing storytellers, I realized that people's attention span was expanding. So I realized I was also developing listeners. And I do believe that listening is a revolutionary act. And at the highest level, it's love. So it seemed the perfect place for the storyteller and the story listener, which are soulmates, to be.
And we
So it's
need that. We need that today
13 years later.
than ever.
Yes.
So I'm going to get some advice from you.
Mhm.
I'm telling my story and other people's stories, and I'm doing that through this broadcast, right? It's called Be Heard, Empower Yourself. But I also wrote 4 books, and I would, to be very honest, there's not really money in podcasting unless you have like a lot of viewers to get monetized. So I'm not doing that for the money. I'm doing it for what you had first talked about to get known, right? Like branding, so people
No,
know
I didn't do it to get, oh, you mean for others to get known?
others.
I
Well,
do it because I did it, I did it because I was inspired to connect the city. And
oh
I
yeah,
did it because I love it.
okay,
And then it developed into things that I couldn't imagine at the time. I
yeah.
now, facilitate storytelling workshops. I do speaking. I've made a film of
Well,
my
I
own
want to know
story.
how to become a speaker and to be hired. I wrote my first book. It's called, you'll relate to this, Raised by Wolves, Trapped by Demons. Okay.
Wow, I love that
Yeah.
title.
And the Raised by Wolves were really my parents. Okay. I won't even get into it. And the demons in the beginning were men, and then it became alcohol. Okay. And then finally, when I finally took the right path, hit a bottom, saw the light, so to speak. I have 34 years of sobriety this month, May 13th, yeah. And I began having a spiritual life and helped other women because through AA, that's part of your service is to help other women. So by doing that, it just led to one thing after another. So when I wrote this book, it was to send a message to women who had been in situations like me or are in them now, in a domestic abuse thing or parents that are stifling and keeping them from growing into grown women, which was happening to me. My parents wanted me to stay at home forever and work for the family, and like a slave, really. Um, so I sold quite a few books, but now I would like to sell some more, and I would like to go on a speaking tour, you know. So how do you get your engagements for speaking? Like, how do people find you for that?
Well, I host the Secret Society of Twisted Storytellers, which is a live monthly event that we produce out of the Charles Wright Museum of African American History. We've been
Hmm.
doing it for 13 years. So
Hmm.
I'm a live performer. I'm an actor.
Gotcha.
I'm a comedian. I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
So I host the show,
Oh, you
and
host.
people see me
Uh-huh.
host the show. So can you come and host this? Or I host
Gotcha.
um I host a
Word
show.
of mouth. Hmm.
I host a
Word
show
of mouth.
here called Detroit Performs Live, and it's a PBS show. And so people just drop in my emails
Gotcha.
and say,
Gotcha.
"Can you
Yeah.
do this? Can you?" Because they see me doing it.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to look into making a commercial for myself. How's that sound? To get a
Yeah, yeah.
speaking.
And the other thing, you have 4 books, so
Oh,
you can
yeah.
do a book tour. You
Yeah,
know,
and all four of them are different. They're all different.
Yeah, you have a platform, which is your
Mhm.
book. So there are speaker bureaus
Yeah.
to join.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that. So I'm hoping that some of my listeners are getting something out of this too, because like I meet so many women today, young women mostly, that either want to, well, okay, let's rephrase that. The young women want their own podcast. The older women want to write a book, which makes sense when you think about it. So, um, I was tickled pink yesterday because I was a little bit down and my nurse called me and she said, I'm not calling as your nurse. I'm calling to tell you something. I said, okay. She said, I was telling another nurse about you. And of course, Mimi Tallow is like my author name, my professional name. And she said, I was talking about you. And she said, is she an author? And she said, well, yeah, she is an author. She gave me her card. She said, is her author named Mimi Tell? She said, yes. This woman said, she is my favorite author. Now, Satori, you can relate to how that felt.
Yeah, I know
I,
you're great.
ah, right? The joy that someone I don't even know, I'm her favorite author, and I don't even know her. So that really made my day. And I started late in life. So I was like, 72 when I started this career.
Hmm.
How did tell me about the Parliament Funkadelic. What is that?
Parliament Funkadelic is probably one of the most iconic funk bands in the world.
Oh,
George Clinton,
really?
George Clinton is
Oh, no, George
the
Floyd.
mastermind. They're still touring. He
Yeah,
just got his he just got his star on Hollywood Boulevard last year.
I know who he is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I sang with them, and I was one of the spin-off groups called the Brides of Funkenstein. And so I
Wow,
recorded and toured with them for years.
how exciting. How
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah,
Mhm.
wow.
That's who Parliament Funkadelic is.
Yeah, well, I was into a lot of that music in the 70s. That's
Yeah,
been around,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, I tell my husband all the time we went to high school in the 60s, and at that time you were either like into rock and roll and the blues and the black genre of songs, or you were Peter, Paul, and Mary and Simon and Garfunkel. He was Simon and Garfunkel. And I
Wow.
was the other way.
Okay.
And that's okay. Well,
Yeah.
it's just funny, but it was like that then. There was a shift in music.
Hmm.
Yes. And it was like after the Beatles and after all that happened. And then all of a sudden, you know, I think, in my opinion, the Beatles were almost like considered their sound, they were more black than white. And that made a crossover in music. I'm not going to discuss that with you because you're more of an authority than I
The
am.
Beatles, often reading about their influences, they were influenced by Black artists.
Thank you. That's what I was getting at. Yes.
Mhm.
So, and that's where I went. My father worked for Capitol Records, and he brought me home their first single, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And that is one of not many nice memories I have of him. That I was the first one to have that record in my neighborhood. That was great. Um, so listen, we're talking about the secret society of twisted storytellers, and you told us what your vision was behind finding that. And so, is there a way you go about curating the stories for your events?
Well, I choose a curatorial theme. Like this month, it's Remarkable Men. And then I invite people to submit a 150-word synopsis of their story, or I approach people and say, would you like to tell a story? Or people recommend, the storytellers come to me in many different ways. And
Me
then I
too.
find out, do they have a story that fits that theme? It doesn't matter to me whether they've ever told a story again before or they're a
Mhm.
seasoned speaker. It doesn't matter because what I do, I spend 4 weeks with them plus a rehearsal, helping them and supporting them with the craft of telling a story. Because as I said earlier, you may
Yeah,
have a story and it will make a profound difference in someone else's life. But
yeah,
if you don't know how to tell your story in a compelling way, no one
yes.
listens. So storytelling is an art, it's a craft, and it's a science. So at the highest level, it's an art, but there's a craft to it, like anything else
Oh, yeah,
that people
absolutely.
engage with. So
Yeah,
I always, it doesn't matter to me if you have a story, I will midwife your story and suggest the craft or where to start your story because people think storytelling is telling their biography. Well, I was born and I was 6. Well, who told you that story? Because you don't remember being born. So we have to visualize the story. We
yeah,
have to start in the action because people
exactly.
relate to action. If I'm driving and I'm telling you I'm driving down I-75, it's January, it's icy, it's snow, and I hit some black ice and my car starts spinning, you can see that.
Yes.
And you're
Oh,
driving
yes.
and your car is
Yes.
spinning and you hit.
Exactly.
So you have to start with a who, what, when.
Yes. But my first chapter in my book starts off that I was in the waiting room of the psychiatrist, and that it wasn't my first time in a psychiatrist's office, but it was the first time that I was sober in a psychiatrist's office. And then I began to describe the office, the portrait on the wall that
Yeah.
he has, the comfy couch over in there, that kind of thing. And that I've been told that when they read my book,
Mhm.
they feel like I'm right there talking to them.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that must have been a talent that I never thought about. It was there, just latent, just there. And I'm so glad that I found it, even though it was later. So let me ask you this. Um, what do you think the most powerful story you've ever heard or told was?
I think the most powerful story I've ever told is the one that's being released this week on June 12th. It's my film called Confessions of a Menopausal Femme Fatale. It's my own story. It's
Uh-huh.
streaming on Amazon Prime, Apple
Really?
TV Plus,
Yeah.
and Google TV.
Now,
Uh,
how did they get that? How did that end up with them, your
I
story?
found I my PR team recommended a distributor to me, and because I started writing it in 2018. I developed it, and in 2023 I performed it for 3 nights at the Detroit Public Theater. I had a Black Pepper Studios and Jonathan Jewell Chatton filmed it, and then it took two
Oh,
years in post-production, found a distributor, and now, leading up to the film, I've been going on podcasts like yours to
yes.
promote it so it comes out. So that's the most powerful story I've
Wow.
ever told, because the stories in that are stories that I tell that I didn't want to tell, but I want women to start to talk about menopause, postpartum depression, and the things that we have been socialized to be ashamed to talk about, which have become taboo. And so I
Absolutely.
initially made the movie because when I was going through perimenopause, I couldn't find any older women that would help me or advise me. My mother didn't remember. Other women didn't want to date or age themselves. Some
Talk
women
about
said
it.
they refused to go through it. So it's my most honest, ambitious work. So I use stand-up comedy, which is a profession. I use singing, which is a profession, and I use storytelling, which is a profession, to tell this story of my journey of 12 years of accepting myself, forgiving myself, healing myself, wrapping up the past so nothing's ahead of me, but a canvas, a blank future that I can now create. Because menopause for me is a time to celebrate, nothing to hide. It's
No,
something.
congratulations, though. Let me
I'm
say congratulations. That's amazing.
very proud of myself. I mean,
You should
it
be.
took 8 years to deliver this baby. And
I,
it just tells me that I
yeah.
can have a vision, sustain that vision,
Mm,
and drive that vision to a manifestation. The most powerful story I've ever heard. There are so many because, like I say, by this time, there's been over 700, 800 storytellers that I have mentored. But the ones that stick out in my mind are the ones that find redemption, forgiveness, and grace at the end of their harrowing challenges in life.
exactly.
So,
Exactly. Because I know for myself, but first of all, you and I have a lot in common. I don't care what color we are, but we are women. And I mean, women have it tough, not just in this country, all over the world. In some places, women have it so much worse than we do, you know. But we never have an easy time, you know. And Black women, you have a worse time than white women do, but you still, we all have that bond. Do you know, I feel that. You know, we always have that bond because it's always the white man that's going to get ahead no matter what. And we're paid less. And I've been through that too. And we've been told that we should stay home and have babies and all this stuff and been controlled or tried. People, men have tried to control us. So, the book I wrote does speak to a lot of that, but it also, the ending of the book shows how I got out of that and that there is a way to get out of that. And it's a lot about spirituality and faith. You have to have faith. It doesn't matter what religion you are, because I'm not talking about that kind of faith or spirituality, okay? But that's the thing. We weren't doing that. And now we're doing that. We're talking up. Now, I don't know how old you are, but in the 60s, women fought for their rights. And you know, the Black people fought for their rights. And gay people, they couldn't even talk about being gay. All right.
mm,
And then all of a sudden, we got some of those rights. We got those rights. And guess what? They're taking them away again. They're
yeah,
trying to take
fine.
way. And we got to get loud. We got to get loud.
And
Because,
that's what I think menopause does for women. It opens up that portal. You start to value yourself. You start to take your power. You started to become fully self-expressed. You stop thinking that your value exists in the gaze of a patriarchal system.
right.
And you realize that I don't have to play small. I don't have to be less than myself so that
Yeah,
I can associate myself with
yes.
so-called power. I am powerful. And menopause helps that effort because you stop being phony, inauthentic, engaging in fake friendships, fake
Oh,
ways of being, and you start to
absolutely.
see, wow, I'm big. I take up more space than I dreamed I could take up. And then I think that there's a freedom to not have to edit yourself, to not have to manage yourself as small and girly.
Oh,
Um,
gosh, yes.
and you're able to own
Hmm.
your choices. You're able to forgive your regrets. You're able to show up and say the things that are important for you to say and let judgment fall where it
You get
falls.
more powerful as you get older and you get away from gender in your own mind. You don't think about things in a way that of your gender.
Yeah.
And my husband has a progressive disease that may end up in dementia. And I got a lawyer and we drew up a trust fund, and I was going to be trustee. And I took the papers to the bank with my husband, notarized. And it comes out, my bank statement comes out the next month, and it says, my husband is the trustee. No, I'm the trustee. How could he be the trustee? I'm the trustee. And they had me down too, but he wasn't supposed to be on as trustee. He was trustor, the person that was being taken care of. Go to my lawyers, go to the bank, had to do everything all over again because the bank was wrong. Okay. Get the next month's bank statement. They did it again. I'm like, this is yes. So now go back to the bank again. They said, it's all going to be right. The third time, Satori, it came, and he was still on there as trustee. So I got on the phone, and it's a lot of baloney about you have to make an appointment and come in person. And I said, I just had surgery and I cannot drive for 4 weeks to 6 weeks. You send somebody to my house, and this should not be. This is your mistake. And I got loud. And then I called. I said to my husband, give me your phone. I called my lawyer on his phone, and I had the bank and the lawyer on speaker. And I said, here's my lawyer. And my lawyer got loud. He said, what is wrong with you people? And I said, you like this. I'm a woman. They don't believe I should be a trustee because I'm a woman. I
Wow.
mean it. I mean it. And I meant it. And I still mean it. So this woman was still like reading from her script. And I said, okay, stop. I want to escalate this case. What do you mean escalate? You know what I mean. I mean, go over your head, take it to your supervisor. And the lawyer's going, yes, escalate it. The next day, I got the papers with me as trustee.
Good.
But look what I had to go through. 2 months of this, 2 months. And you know why? Because I'm a woman and nobody's going to tell me I'm wrong. Okay? I mean, what's there not to understand? And they're the bankers and they don't understand. But that's just an example of what you're talking about. I probably wouldn't have done that or been able to find my voice to do that at 16 or 20 or
No,
30.
no.
But you know, what advice? Let me ask. Well, before that, even because I was kind of talking about being strong and also vulnerable. You want to be vulnerable too. How do you balance that? Being vulnerable and yet strong in your storytelling.
I think vulnerability is a form of strength, profound strength, because you have to have a certain level of self-acceptance to be
Mm,
able to know that being vulnerable, there's really nothing to protect because I'm human. And whatever it is that I'm going through, I know that there's another human being that has gone through it as well. Not to be afraid to be wrong, that the possibility exists in every moment that I could be wrong. And it's not about being right or wrong. It's about being effective. It's about being honest. It's about being truthful. It's about being a leader.
yeah.
And leadership isn't me marching in front with people behind me. It's
Mm,
about maybe it's sometimes following someone else as a
mm,
leader,
right.
or not having to say anything because someone else is very proficient at it. But
Yeah.
knowing that integrity as well is
Yeah.
a component of vulnerability, because you have
Absolutely.
to, no one can keep their word 24/7 in every, but you can honor your word,
Yeah.
which is to say, if you give your word, then you have
Mhm.
to show up for it. And if you can't show up for it, then you have to honor it by letting another person know, I won't be able to keep my word. I know that may cause some fallout, and I'd like to reschedule. I'd like to re-engage. And how can we go forward with this? And I think that
Exactly.
that leads to a certain amount of trust. So vulnerability
Yeah.
creates an environment
Yeah.
where there's a trust in the space of the two people or the audience or whatever it is. Yeah.
But I could not be vulnerable when I was younger because I was a person, a victim of domestic violence, abuse, etc. I divorced that man and he stalked me for 2 years, but would not pay child support. So I raised two children. They were 3 and 4 years old, and put myself through 2 years of college while being stalked by this madman.
Yeah.
So I had to be tough, I had to be very tough. And through the years, things happened where I finally found myself, found my truth. I had addiction. I came out of that. I had problems mentally. I got help for that. But today I can afford to be vulnerable
Mhm.
because I have grown and I am around good people that I can trust, including a husband I'm with 37 years,
Mhm.
a good man that
Mhm.
goes to church with me every Sunday and prays and we meditate. I
And
do not
you
have
can
that.
trust yourself, which is the most important thing. You trust
Yes, I can.
yourself. And then that allows vulnerability.
Yes. And I'm able today to ask for help. So yesterday I was feeling a little down and I said, okay, let's watch a movie. And Tyler Perry's new movie, Straw Woman.
Well, yes, what isn't that the great, what's
Oh my God. I watched that movie. And by the time I got done watching that movie, I no longer felt sorry for myself. And you said something earlier about there's always somebody worse than you, right? And I like, everything that she went through was 10 times worse what I went through when I was young and had a child, two children. And it was because she was a Black woman. I know that. I know that. She was treated 100 times worse than I was treated. But the acting in that, she was just wonderful.
She's a
And
great actor.
Tariji, isn't she great? And Sherry Shepherd, all of them,
Yeah.
wonderful. So that movie just really touched my heart, and that tells a lot. That movie. Everybody watch that movie,
Yes. Yes. Tyler Perry
especially women.
hits and misses, but he hit that time.
and it was, um, oh, just it just touched my heart. I had to bring that up because that's the most powerful story I have heard so far. And so, what advice, Satori, would you give to aspiring storytellers?
Just as what we've been talking about. Be honest, be authentic, stand
Mhm.
in your truth, and
Yep.
allow yourself to be vulnerable. And if you, I would seek coaching in terms of storytelling.
Hmm.
Um, Before I go on stage to tell a story, I usually run my story by as many people as possible. Individuals, I'll call them up and what do you think about this? And hear their feedback because at this point, um, you know what the message is. I know what I want people
Yeah.
to leave with, and although whatever I want people to leave with, they're going to leave with whatever they leave with. But
Hmm.
it's good to know. I come from a background of stand-up comedy. So the only way I know that what I'm saying is funny or that I'm
Yeah.
funny
Yeah.
is if
Yeah.
people laugh.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't I can't just go up there and not know. So you have to try, you have to go out there and try it. If people laugh, great. If
Yep.
they laugh twice, three times, you know you got a winner.
Oh, yeah.
If they don't laugh and you still think it's funny, you still got to work on it, right?
That's right.
So storytelling, I use the same method. I
Mhm.
usually call up people, tell them my story. And then if they have a question, I know my story hasn't answered something. If they give
Mhm.
feedback I can use, I use it. If they give me feedback I can't use, I don't use it. But all feedback is great because it leads to a creative process because they're thinking in a way that I'm not. And so I go explore that thought process. And if there's something I can take of value, I'll include it in my story. If not, then I'll just be grateful that I had that little tryst with that
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Um, and then storytelling has a format. Maybe someone wants you to tell a 5 minute story, 15-minute story, hour
Mhm.
story. So you have to know, okay, if I'm telling the story in 5 minutes,
Mhm.
what are the most important elements to include? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you have more time to
Mhm.
develop certain
Mhm.
things, and on and on and on. So
So you have lived in Detroit and Canada? I'm looking at
yes,
your bio. Okay,
so
but where are you now? Back in Detroit?
Detroit, Detroit.
Okay, good. But in Canada, you did some stuff there too, right? Didn't you uh have something to do with a theater company? Yeah.
Yes, I helped to found Obsidian Theatre Company. There was a
Wonderful.
play that I wanted to produce or I wanted to see produced. So I did a play reading to invite other theater companies and producers to come and hear the reading so they could see the value of putting the play in. After
Mhm.
that, I went around to all the theater companies and they told me that their mandate was this or they couldn't do that and I noticed they were getting funding for diversity, but they would have one black actor in one play for their whole season. And
You see, get the funding.
that didn't
Hmm.
really bother me as much as why can't I get this one? So I thought it would be easier to start a theater company and
Yes.
to try to get one play produced at a theater company. So 12 other actors were gathered, and we
Mhm.
went through the process of creating a theater company. Now, 25 years later, it's one of the leading uh, diversified theater
Mhm.
companies in Canada. And I really love when I go back to Toronto. I was in Toronto to do a play about 3 years ago. And
Uh-huh.
the artistic director of Obsidian Theater came to one of the rehearsals and she didn't even know who I was or that I helped found
Mhm.
a theater company. And I love that because it's like I created something that has been running so long that you don't even know who the founding people are, and you're being paid. You're the artistic director. You're producing a season. You're
Yeah.
developing playwrights. It's, you're funded. And so I'm happy to see that's something that I I envision, along with 12 other actors, are
Yeah.
serving not only other actors and artistic people, directors and playwrights and whatnot, but it's serving the community of Toronto and theater
Yeah.
goers.
Yeah. Well, I have found you a fascinating and powerful woman and really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.
I hope you feel the same
I
way.
do feel the same.
Yeah.
And I thank you for being so open and forthcoming about your life.
Yeah, and a lot of I had some flack about that, like family members get upset and about the book, and come to find out that the ones that were the maddest had not read it. Don't you love that? Don't
I
you?
love that. I love it.
I love it. And I called them on it. I called them on it. I said, "Did you read the book?" No. So what's your problem? What do you think is in the book? So, but now it's not even a story anymore. It's like she wrote a book and that's it. But I loved having you on. We do have a lot in common in that we are powerful women and we're trying to make change in this world. And you're a light. I'm a light, and the world needs light. So
Yes.
thank you so much. And I'm wondering, do you have a website? I'm sure you do. You have a
Satori
website?
Shakoor, SatoriShakoor.com,
Okay, good.
twistedcolors.org.
You have two.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to put them in the show notes so people can find you because I'm sure they'll want to. All
If
right.
there's anything you need, you can contact Amy or Rick too.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks again and keep doing this wonderful work that you're doing in this world. All
Thank you
right.
so much. You have a wonderful week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.